Hello, my dear students and friends. Welcome back to my class. I'm Professor Urus Ilyas, and this content has been developed by me and by Dr. Iqbal Imam. He's also in Department of Wildlife Sciences, and we will be discussing. We have already discussed many things like the environment, its components. Then we discuss about the concept of ecosystem and its component types of ecosystem: forest, grassland, aquatic, desert, food chain, food web, and ecological pyramid. Now we will be discussing the biogeochemical cycle. Biogeochemical cycle, or more generally, a cycle of matter, is the movement and transformation of the chemical elements and compounds between living organism, the atmosphere, the earth crust. So here we start with the biogeochemical cycle, and under the biogeochemical cycle, we will be starting with the water cycle. Water. Water is known as the elixir of life. Water is among the most essential requisites that nature provides to sustain life on earth. We cannot survive without water. It's very, very difficult. The air, what oxygen and water, these are two very important things. We need our organs to work. So water is elixir of life, and we must have the water. So under the water cycle is a complex system that describes the continuous movement of water within the earth, how they move. This is what we'll be discussing. And atmosphere, earth and atmosphere includes many different processes, including evaporation, condensation, sublimation, precipitation, transpiration, runoff, infiltration. So these are the process the water circulate. So this picture is explaining everything, and we'll be explaining each and everything. This is how sublimation takes place. Condensation. What is condensation? Transpiration, taking water from the vegetation. So this is all we'll be talking about under this water cycle. So living organisms require inorganic metabolites from biosphere. The hydrosphere supplies water. We know, we have already discussed about the hydrosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere and biosphere. So it is the hydrosphere which supplies the water. The lithosphere supplies all necessary minerals, and the atmosphere supplies oxygen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide. All three are important. Together, these inorganic material provide all the chemical elements needed in the building and maintenance of living organic matter. So that's how water is very important. So we'll be discussing about the hydrological cycle or water cycle. The hydrological cycle involves the continuous circulation of water in the earth atmosphere system. As its course, the water cycle is the motion of the water from the ground to the atmosphere and back again. So water from the ground goes to the atmosphere and come back in the form of the rain. So how it actually works, this is what we are going to discuss under the water cycle. The hydrological cycle is the exchange of energy which influences climate. When water condenses, it releases energy and warmth to the environment. When water evaporates, it takes energy from the surrounding environment, dropping temperature. So that's how it works. Water is also the most abundant component of the protoplasm. Therefore, it is major requirement of all the living organism. In metabolism, water is the only source of hydrogen and one of the several sources of oxygen. So we'll be discussing about the components of hydrological cycle, how this cycle works, what are the steps. So hydrological cycle is a balanced continuous process of following components stages like evaporation, transpiration. Evaporation means because of the sunlight, it is evaporating. Then we have transpiration, then condensation, precipitation, percolation going inside the ground, runoff, and groundwater movements. So these are the different stages in the hydrological cycle, which we'll be discussing one by one. So evaporation, first we should take up the evaporation. We all know what is evaporation. Means evaporation is the transformation of water from liquid to the gases. When we boil the water on the gas stove or on the stove, what we see, if we leave the water, boiling water for more than the required time, what we'll see, the half of the utensil, half of the vessel is empty, because of the heat, the half of the water has already been evaporated, has been transformed from water to the gas. So evaporation is the transformation of the water from liquid to gas phase as it moves from the ground or bodies of the water into the overlaying atmosphere. Solar energy evaporates water from the soil, ground, surface vegetation, water surface, and ocean into the atmosphere. Second is the transpiration. What is transpiration? So transpiration is the evaporation of water from plant through stomata. In most plant, transpiration is a passive process largely controlled by the humidity of the atmosphere and the moisture content of the soil. This is transpiration. Evaporation of the water from plant through stomata. We all know plants have got the stomata, and through stomata they breathe, they transpire. So the transpiration takes place through stomata in the plant. And in most plants, transpiration is a passive process largely controlled by the humidity of the atmosphere and the moisture content of the soil. On the transpired water passing through a plant, only 1% is used in the growth process of the plant. So remaining 99% is passed into the atmosphere. So whatever water plants are having, just 1% they utilize, rest is passes into the atmosphere. The third is the condensation. Condensation is the process whereby water vapor is changed into a liquid state. This is condensation. In the atmosphere, condensation may appear as clouds, dew, or fog. Now, when we see the clouds in the sky, that is actually the condensation. So, that is the process where water vapor is changed into the liquid state. That is called condensation. In the atmosphere, condensation may appear as cloud, dew, or fog. Cooling and condensation of water vapor is high altitude produces cloud. Condensation is the opposite of the evaporation. So cooling and condensation of water vapor at high altitude produce clouds. So condensation is the opposite of the evaporation. In evaporation, the water is going into the gas form, while condensation means making of the water is freezing and making into the clouds, water vapors at high. Condensation of the cooling and condensation of the water vapors produce the clouds. So this is the condensation. So we have discussed about the evaporation, then transpiration and condensation. The next is the precipitation. Precipitation means the rain or the snow. So precipitation is the condensed water vapor that falls to the earth's surface. That is called precipitation. So precipitation, condensed water vapor that falls to the earth. Water vapor continues to combine with the water droplets until it is too heavy to stay in the sky and longer. So this is the precipitation. Most precipitation occur as rain, but almost also include snow, hail, fog, drip, graupels, sleet, and snow. So in the area like in the Gangetic Plain or the plain area, peninsula area, we receive the rainfall, while at the high altitude we receive the snowfall. Thus, water as rain, hail, or snow is precipitated over land and water surface. Whatever Precipitation means bringing back the water again in the water form, and it is going to the ground, it is going to the land. So that is the precipitation. Percolation, the water coming to the ground, going into the water, that is called percolation. Percolation is the horizontal flow of water through the soil and rock under the influence of gravity. So percolation is actually horizontal flow of water through the soil and rocks under the influence of the gravity. It has to run towards the, because of the gravitational force. Water on the land surface eventually percolates into the soil as groundwater. In some regions of the earth, water percolates through the porous rocks and forms underground reservoir. So this is the picture showing the process of percolation, how water is running from. It runs towards the downhill because of the gravity, because of the gravitational force. The underground water bearing layer of porous rocks situated above impermeable rocks strata and called aquifer. All the water precipitated on land does not percolate into the soil. Then the runoff. What is runoff? Just runoff occurs when there is excessive precipitation and the ground is saturated, cannot absorb all the water. So if it is a heavy rainfall, there are some water logging or some water runoff, because ground has a capacity to absorb the water. So runoff occur when there is excessive precipitation and the ground is saturated, cannot absorb any more water. That is the runoff. River, streams, ponds, creeks and lakes are result of runoff. Some runoff evaporate into the atmosphere, but most water is river and lakes return to the ocean. So there is a chain. Water from the Himalayas coming down to lake, glaciers, lakes, rivers, and finally they are going to the oceans. So some runoff evaporate into the atmosphere, but most water is rivers and lakes return to the oceans. Evaporation of runoff into the atmosphere begin the hydrological cycle over again. This is the groundwater movement. This picture is showing how the groundwater is moving. All the water precipitated on land does not percolate into the soil. Surplus surface water or runoff flows into stream, rivers, lakes, and catchment storage areas of reservoir. Groundwater flow in the part of stream flow that has infiltrated the ground, entered the phreatic zone and has been discharged into a stream channel or springs and seepage water. So groundwater flows in the part of stream flow that has infiltrated the groundwater. So this is the picture which is explaining the groundwater movement. The direction and the speed of groundwater movement is determined by the various characteristics of the aquifers and confining layer of subsurface rocks in the ground. So water moving below ground depends on the permeable, how easy or difficult it is for water to move, and on the porosity. Porosity means the amount of open space in the material of the subsurface rock. The phreatic zone or zone of saturation is the part of an aquifer below the water table in which relatively all pores and fractures are saturated with the water. So permeability is one of the important component. How easy or difficult it is for water to move. It's all depend on the permeability. If the rock has characteristics that allow water to move relatively freely through it, then groundwater can move significant distance in a number of days. But groundwater can also sink into deep aquifer, where it takes thousands of years to move back into the environment. or even go into the deep groundwater storage where it might stay for much longer period. So aquifer, if water goes deep aquifers into deep aquifers, it takes years and years to come back and evaporate because it is not exposed to the sun. Evaporation take place mostly when it is sunny. That is the time when evaporation take place. So what is the role of the water cycle? Water cycle is very important to sustain our life. Water cycle is very important for all the creature existing on the earth, whether it's a plant, whether animal, or we, the human being. Organism withdraw water as a metabolic raw material mainly from the hydrosphere. Aquatic animal absorb water directly, we drink water. Terrestrial animal absorb water from the reservoir present in soil and bodies of fresh water. So aquatic animals, since they are living inside the water body, so they take directly. But we human being take it from lakes, rivers, or the groundwater. We are getting water in our taps, that is the municipal water, that is the groundwater, or coming from nearby canals. So terrestrial animal absorb the water from the reservoir present in soil and in bodies of fresh water. So animal and plants move such water through their bodies and in the process retain required amount. So animals and plants both move such water through their bodies. We retain whatever we require, whatever is the requirement of our body, and rest is go out. The rest is excreted partly as liquid water, but more particularly as water vapor, which raises the moisture content of the atmosphere. Thus, a given amount of environmental water goes from hydrosphere to atmosphere. So, whatever water we have, we get the water from the hydrosphere. So, whatever water we have, it goes to the atmosphere faster through the metabolic process of living organism than if that water was simply allowed to evaporate directly from the hydrosphere. So, a given amount of environmental water goes from hydrosphere to atmosphere faster through the metabolic process of living organism than if that water was simply allowed to evaporate directly from the hydrosphere. In other words, the metabolism of terrestrial organism actively contributes toward the maintenance of the global water cycle. Everything is dependent upon our metabolic rate, metabolism. So a metabolism or terrestrial organism contribute toward the maintenance of the global water cycle. The water cycle influences climatic condition not only within the seas but also in the air and on land. Another climatic effect is the result of the thermal properties of water. So among all liquid, water is one the slowest to heat or cool, and it stores a very large amount of thermal energy. Thus oceans thus become huge reservoir or solar heat. So surface water is also very important because it traps the carbon. It provides us not only the drinkable water but also it uh, purify the environment. So this is about the water cycle, and water cycle also influence global climate. Global climate is very much dependent on the water cycle. Global climate over long period of time is determined by the relatively amount of water locked into the polar ice. How much water has been locked into the polar ice, that determines the global climate. As polar ice is melting, water level are now rising and coast lines are gradually being submerged. Polar ice keep on melting, water level are now rising and coastlines are gradually being submerged. If trends during the past 50 years are reliable, whatever trends government website are giving, that indicates the earth appear to be warming up generally. So earth is warming up because of the loss of water, because of the um, submerging of the coastline, because of the waste of the water. So in general, trends during the past 50 years are reliable indicator the earth appears to be warming up generally. So thank you very much. With this, I end my class here. And in next class, we'll meeting again in our next class, and we'll be discussing about another biogeochemical cycles. These cycles are very important for the sustenance, for the survival of the human being. And we have just discussed water cycle. Water cycle is elixir of life. Without water, we cannot sustain, we cannot survive, nor we, nor the animal, nor the plants. So we need to have the water, and for that we have to conserve the water. So thank you very much for patience listening. So we will be meeting in our next class. Thank you.